Okay, everybody, so what we are going to do today, we're going to get into our first of some environmental things going on in the Middle East. And the main thing we're going to talk about are the issues with water, of course, and a lot of this area is drying up. And then we're going to talk a little bit about farming, about what people are trying to do here, and some really impressive things. So let's get right into it. So the problem, of course, with the Middle East is it is an area in which you have a tremendous lack of water. If you look at the map here and this idea of water scarcity, okay, you can see, a couple nations here in absolute shortage. In other words, they don't have enough water, and then areas that are moving to it that are vulnerable. It's tragic in many ways, and the fact of the matter is water makes everything else run. When that goes away, you get every type of imaginable problem that you could think of here because, of course, of our need to use water for just pure survival. Now, it is in very short supply, but what makes it even harder is that because many of these areas are deserts, there's not a lot of land that is arable or land that you can farm. So if you don't have a lot of land to farm and then you don't have a lot of water to go with that land, it is going to give you problems. And the vast majority of the population lives on less than the recommended amount of water every single day. Now, the other problem that you have here is that this water shortage and scarcity is leading to problems, like, for instance, the possibility of, say, a war, because the few rivers that flow through these areas, and we'll get into this a little deeper in class, the few rivers that flow through these areas are multinational rivers. And so nations that are at the, quote, top of the river, in other words, where rivers start, can often control the flow before it gets down to where the rivers go out into bays or oceans and stuff like that. And so when you can do that, that causes problems. So for instance, there's been issues between Syria and Turkey because a number of rivers that flow through Syria go through Turkey first, and Turkey is, hogging the water, if you will. And that, again, becomes incredibly problematic. Now, there are a variety of some river systems here. You have the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers that go through basically the core of the Middle East. You have the Nile, which goes through the Sudan and Egypt. You have the Jordan River. There is some underground water, and I'm going to show you some cool things that they kind of do with that as well. And you have wells that access that. But again, the issue is just that there isn't enough water around. Okay, so look at this thing over here. So, the UAE, this is how much water they have, the lighter blue, and this is on the right is how much water they technically need. And of course, at the bottom, you see Bahrain, like, good luck. And so when demand vastly exceeds supply, there are incredible amounts of problems that these people can and do have because of, again, the lack of water. And then we add another issue is that all water has a little bit of salt in it, okay? And the issue is many of these areas are also near like bays and other saltwater areas that you're getting the salt buildup in the water. And as a result, it only takes a small percentage of salt in water, to make it not be able to drink. So if you get just a little bit in it, you are in trouble. And so a lot of people think that if that the water is like 30 or 40% salt, and actually only needs to be like 3, 4, 5%, and when it gets to that, you're in trouble. Like, that's what it works out at. And then on the right here, that used to be a farm, but because of water salination, and you see the damage to crops here, the fields are destroyed, the crops are destroyed, and so now we have lack of water, we have salt building up in water, and of course we all know humans pollute water. I mean, let's be honest, that's what we do. And so you add these things up, and there is a stress. Okay, you and I in the United States of America, we want some water for the most part. We go and we get some water, And otherwise you can't, and that is really really problematic. Okay, and again, we'll be getting into some of these things a little bit deeper. Now, there is a process of what people are trying to do to try to turn it around. Okay, so if we don't have enough water to begin with, and if it doesn't rain in this area, what can we do? And one thing is a desalination process. That there is the process that we are getting to the point where we can take ocean water and make it especially usable for watering crops. And that is of tremendous importance, okay, because then you can increase the food supply, and eventually, if we can do it, well enough that maybe we can be creating more and more drinking water. The problem is right now, in order to do that, it takes a tremendous amount of energy. So you're talking about oil usage and electricity usage and all that type of stuff. So it's not super profitable, and you can read kind of the process, how it works, if you want to pause it here and stuff like that. This was originally from a plant in Australia, so that's where I got this from. But here's one that is on the coast of Saudi Arabia. And it gives you an idea of, this is a giant plant and the process that it takes. But, we're doing some things to possibly turn this stuff around. All right, but we still have to farm, right? People still need to eat. And of course, you're going to be getting food that's imported and stuff, but you do have farming. You have right around the rivers, you will have large amounts of farming that they can. If you look here on the right, you can see this is the Nile River. And so this area is incredibly actually abundant. And you have lots of different crops that can be grown here, and especially grain. You also have some pastoral groups that, particularly like sheep and goats. You're not going to see like a lot of cattle and stuff like that, but with sheep and goats, they don't need quite as much. Their diets are a little bit more diversified. They don't drink as much water, so you can use those groups as well. Okay, and this just gives you an idea of kind of where the farming is. You can see most of it, there is not a lot of farming. The dark water, you have, the different bodies of water that are there that people can use, as well as, in some of the coastal areas, you will get rain. Once you get further in, it's not. This area over here where the mouse is at, that's the Tigris and the Euphrates, so that's going to help out as well. But a lot of it here is you're getting really creative with irrigation, okay? And what the folks in the Middle East, and we've started to adopt this too, is realizing that if you just try to like water stuff and just, spray stuff over there, you're actually going to lose a lot of that water toward evaporation and things along that line. Whereas if you use what's called drip irrigation, you see this right here. So this is a farm here growing some perhaps cypress or olive trees eventually in the long run. You just have these little hoses that have, the black ones, these are big hoses, and then you have this just little drippy hoses here that are able to put just enough water in there. Because believe it or not, a lot of these plants don't need like crazy amounts of water, they just need some water. And really it's the leaves that aren't as crucial to needing the water, it's the soil. So it's really, really creative. But what is really impressive, in my opinion, are these actual things. So these are fields that are actually in Saudi Arabia, and what they have realized is that it's a different way to use underground water. Okay, that we have this water that is deep underground, and so you catch these wells that are able to, again, very lightly trickle the water up, and then you can use that to create these kind of mini farms in the middle of the sand and get just enough water that you can grow some crops. And here's how it looks looks close up. Really, really cool. And some of the plants that you're looking here, on the right you have wheat, on the left you have dates. So there are a lot of things that you can make it work. But what we see, it's really, really a challenge, and the environment there makes it difficult. But in the end, people are doing really, good things to allowing, the water to, or using what little water they have to get as creative as they can to grow stuff, okay? So we'll get into a lot of this stuff a little bit deeper as we get into class, and make sure that you answer all the questions on your assignment. Okay, see you guys soon.